All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are going deep into the Hare Krishna movement.
Or as it's formerly known, ISKCON.
ISKCON, that's right.
You know, you might already have like a picture in your mind when you think about this.
Totally.
Maybe people chanting on a street corner, or, remember that one Beatles song?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But I have a feeling this deep dive is going to kind of shake up those preconceived notions that you might have about this whole thing.
Yeah, I think so.
We've got some really fascinating historical accounts.
Yes.
And some writings about their cultural impact, and even some like super in-depth looks at their core teachings.
Yeah, we're going to give you the full picture.
That's the goal.
It is a fascinating picture.
It is.
And what might surprise you is that this movement, with its, very ancient Indian traditions, actually like blossomed.
Blossomed, yeah.
In 1960s New York City.
Wow, that's crazy.
Imagine that.
That's so wild.
Amidst the beat poets and the rock and roll scene and like the rise of counterculture.
Right.
Here comes this seemingly traditional spiritual movement.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. Like,
it is.
Like, it totally flips the script on where you'd expect a movement like this to kind of pop up.
Yeah.
So how did like a Swami from India end up like sparking this spiritual revolution right in the heart of the Big Apple?
Yeah, well, that's where A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada comes in.
Okay.
The founder.
The founder.
Yeah, he came to New York when he was 70 years old.
Wow.
And he basically had nothing.
Really?
Except for a deep, deep commitment to spreading Krishna consciousness.
Wow.
So it's a story that speaks to the universal human search for meaning. And it's about the unexpected ways that spiritual paths can intersect with all these different cultures.
Totally, totally.
And, Prabhupada didn't just bring over these like ancient texts. He presented these teachings in a way that really resonated with the anxieties and aspirations of the West in the 1960s.
Oh, interesting.
And perhaps one of the most recognizable aspects of that is the Hare Krishna mantra.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Before we go too deep into the meaning of it, let's actually hear it.
Sure.
I think it'll help kind of set the scene.
Absolutely.
All right.
So let's take a listen.
Wow. Even for someone who maybe isn't familiar with the specifics of it,
Sure.
You got to admit, there's like a certain energy there.
Oh, yeah.
Right. A feeling of, I don't know, peace, maybe, even a bit of like awe. So, for you as someone who studied this movement, what's your take on that?
Well, it's really fascinating how sound can be such a powerful tool for spiritual practice.
Yeah.
Now, what you just heard is it's more than just a catchy tune.
Okay.
It's called the Maha Mantra.
Maha Mantra.
It's Sanskrit.
Okay.
Meaning great mantra.
Got it.
So, in Bhakti Yoga,
right,
which is the path of devotion that ISKCON follows, it's considered a direct invocation of the divine.
The divine.
Yes, specifically Krishna and Rama.
Krishna and Rama.
Who represent love and spiritual perfection.
Okay, so there's definitely more to this than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got this ancient mantra, this charismatic founder, and they somehow just take 1960s New York by storm.
It's amazing.
But it didn't stop there, right?
No, it did not.
This movement spread like wildfire.
It did.
Yeah.
In just a few decades, ISKCON went from a handful of followers in New York to having a presence in over 100 countries.
Wow.
And it wasn't just in places with a strong Hindu tradition.
Right.
You had Hare Krishna devotees popping up in Russia, Brazil, South Africa, like a truly global phenomenon.
So what was it about this movement that allowed it to transcend cultural boundaries and resonate with such diverse groups of people?
That's a great question.
Was it the mantra, the teachings, this charismatic leader?
Could be.
Or was it something else entirely?
Well, it's definitely a multifaceted answer.
Okay.
And that's what makes it so intriguing.
I'm intrigued.
You see, ISKCON offered more than just a set of beliefs.
Okay.
It promoted a lifestyle.
The lifestyle.
Yeah, that appealed to many who were seeking alternatives to the materialistic and often chaotic world around them.
Right.
Take, for example, their strong emphasis on vegetarianism.
Right. And this was way before plant-based diets became, mainstream.
Oh, for sure.
It's interesting because ISKCON's vegetarianism wasn't just about personal health. It was deeply rooted in their principle of ahimsa.
Ahimsa, yes.
Or nonviolence towards all living beings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They saw vegetarianism as an extension of their spiritual practice, a way of living in harmony with nature and minimizing harm.
Right.
And that idea, combined with their focus on simple living, really resonated with the generation that was like questioning consumerism and searching for a more meaningful way of life.
So you're saying the appeal went beyond like just the spiritual aspects.
Yeah.
There was this countercultural element as well, this rejection of materialism and embrace of a simpler, more ethical way of living.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder if some of those values are experiencing like a resurgence today with the rise of minimalism and conscious consumerism.
Yeah, it's definitely a point worth pondering.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into the modern parallels, let's circle back to the cultural impact of ISKCON, because their influence goes far beyond, lifestyle choices. They've left a pretty significant mark on popular culture.
Yeah.
And a lot of that can be traced back to their connection with one very famous musician.
Okay, I'm listening.
George Harrison of the Beatles.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the George Harrison connection.
Yeah.
It's hard to overstate his impact on bringing ISKCON into the Western mainstream.
Totally. I mean, for a lot of people, his music was like their first exposure to the Hare Krishna mantra and like the movement's whole spiritual ideas, Yeah. And his hit song, My Sweet Lord.
Oh, yeah.
Which kind of blended the Maha Mantra with Christian themes. I mean, it really brought those sounds into the mainstream.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing how music can bridge cultural and religious divides.
It's a perfect example of how ISKCON tapped into the existing cultural currents. The 1960s and 70s saw this surge of interest in Eastern spirituality.
Right.
And Harrison's involvement gave it this like rock and roll edge that resonated with a younger audience.
Right, right.
And it wasn't just his solo work.
Yeah.
The Beatles themselves, as a band, experimented with Indian instruments and philosophical concepts,
Oh, for sure.
further introducing these ideas to the West.
Yeah, you can practically see the cultural shift happening.
Yeah.
From those like colorful Hare Krishna devotees chanting on street corners to the explosion of world music and Eastern-inspired spirituality that followed.
Yeah, it's really quite something.
But speaking of cultural impact,
yes,
ISKCON's influence extended beyond just music.
Absolutely.
They were like instrumental in popularizing curtains.
Curtains.
Which are these like devotional chanting sessions that often involve music and dancing.
Yes, curtains became a key part of ISKCON's appeal. They offered this like participatory, immersive experience that went beyond just, passive listening.
Right.
Imagine yourself in the midst of a curtain. Vibrant melodies, rhythmic drumming, people chanting and swaying to the beat.
Yeah.
It's a sensory experience that can be quite transformative, even if you don't fully understand, all the words.
It sounds almost like a precursor to the kind of ecstatic music festivals we see today, where people gather to connect and experience something like larger than themselves through music and communal energy.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But I'd be remiss if we didn't address the elephant in the room.
Uh-oh, what's that?
The controversies that have surrounded ISKCON throughout its history.
Ah, right, of course. Well, no movement, especially one that grows as rapidly as ISKCON did, is immune to challenges and internal conflicts.
Right.
In the early years, there were allegations of cult-like behavior.
Oh, wow.
Financial mismanagement, and even abuse within certain communities.
Oh, really?
These issues definitely tarnished ISKCON's image and led to a period of introspection and reform.
I think it's crucial for our listeners to understand that ISKCON didn't shy away from these problems.
No, not at all.
They initiated a series of reforms aimed at greater transparency, accountability, and improved governance.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They established new ethical guidelines, implemented financial audits, and created channels for addressing grievances.
So they really tried to clean up their act.
Yes, these efforts were vital in restoring trust and demonstrating a commitment to creating a healthier and more ethical environment for their members.
Yeah, it's a reminder that any organization, especially one dealing with matters of faith and spirituality, needs to evolve and adapt to address its shortcomings.
Absolutely.
And in ISKCON's case, these reforms seem to have had a positive impact.
They certainly played a role in ISKCON's continued growth and influence. And despite the controversies, it's essential to recognize the positive impact the movement has had on individuals and communities worldwide.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
For many people, ISKCON has been a source of spiritual guidance, community support, and personal transformation.
Yeah.
Their emphasis on chanting and meditation, for example, has proven to be incredibly beneficial for mental well-being and stress reduction.
Yes, and there's a growing body of scientific research that backs this up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
The rhythmic repetition of the Maha Mantra, combined with focused breathing and meditation techniques, can have a profound impact on calming the nervous system and reducing anxiety.
It makes you wonder, could these ancient practices hold even more relevance in today's fast-paced, hyper-connected world, where stress and anxiety seem to be at an all-time high?
It's a question worth exploring.
It is.
But beyond the individual benefits, ISKCON has also made a significant contribution to global humanitarian efforts.
Okay.
Through their Food for Life program.
Food for Life, okay.
This initiative, which began in the 1970s, has provided millions of meals to people in need around the world.
That's amazing.
It is.
I remember reading about how Food for Life was one of the first organizations to provide aid after the Chernobyl disaster.
Oh, wow.
And they've been active in countless other crisis situations, serving meals with compassion and without discrimination.
Their dedication to serving others is a core part of their philosophy. And their efforts have made a tangible difference in the lives of countless individuals.
Absolutely.
But ISKCON's impact extends beyond just the spiritual and humanitarian realms.
Okay, this is where I'm really intrigued.
Oh, yeah.
You've mentioned this idea of shattering stereotypes.
Yeah.
And I think this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
We tend to put movements like ISKCON in a box, but the reality is often much more complex. Like, for instance, did you know that Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple,
oh, wow,
had a connection to ISKCON?
Really?
While he wasn't a devotee. He frequented their temple in the 1970s.
Wow.
And credited their free food program with helping him during, like, a difficult time in his life.
That's a side of Steve Jobs you don't hear about every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just goes to show that ISKCON's influence goes far beyond, like, their core following.
For sure.
And then there's Allen Ginsberg.
Allen Ginsberg.
The renowned beat poet.
Right. Yeah.
He was an early supporter of ISKCON and saw a connection between their spiritual practices and the countercultural movements of the time.
Interesting.
So you've got tech pioneers, beat poets, rock stars.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It's definitely not the image that comes to mind when most people think of the Hare Krishnas.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the beauty of digging deeper.
Yeah.
You start to see the nuances, the complexities, and the interconnectedness of ideas and movements.
It's a reminder that we should always be willing to, like, look beyond our preconceived notions and embrace the unexpected. But I feel like we've only, like, scratched the surface of ISKCON's practices and teachings.
Yeah, right.
We've talked about the mantra, the lifestyle, the cultural impact.
Yeah.
But there's a whole world of, like, deeper spiritual practices and philosophical concepts that we haven't even touched upon.
Definitely.
All right, so let's dive into that.
Okay.
For those of us who might be, like, intrigued by what we've learned so far, but want to understand the movement on a deeper level, where do we even begin?
Well, the chanting of the Maha Mantra is a central practice for devotees.
Okay.
They typically use a set of 108 beads called a japa mala to keep track as they repeat the mantra.
So it's not just about chanting out loud in a, like, group setting. There's a personal meditative aspect to it as well.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
It's a form of meditation that helps focus the mind and connect with the divine.
But how does that actually work?
Yeah.
I mean, how does repeating these names over and over again lead to spiritual insight or transformation?
That's where the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga comes in.
Okay.
It's all about cultivating love and devotion for God through various practices, including chanting. The idea is that by constantly reminding yourself of the divine through the repetition of the mantra, you gradually purify your mind and heart, allowing you to experience a, like, deeper connection with Krishna.
So it's not just about the words themselves, but, like, the intention and the devotion behind them.
Exactly. It's a process of inner transformation that goes beyond, like, intellectual understanding.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But chanting is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right.
What are some of the other practices involved in ISKCON?
Well, deity worship is another important aspect.
Deity worship.
Yeah. Devotees gather at temples to offer prayers, sing devotional songs, and perform rituals in front of these beautifully adorned deities.
When I picture deity worship, I think of like elaborate ceremonies and rituals.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
To some extent, yes. But the deeper purpose is to cultivate a personal relationship with the divine through these acts of service and devotion.
So it's not about like blindly following rituals.
Right.
But about channeling your devotion through those outward expressions.
Precisely.
Okay.
And along with chanting and deity worship, the study of sacred scriptures plays a crucial role in ISKCON.
Of course, every religion has its sacred texts.
Right.
Which ones are like central to ISKCON?
The Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are considered the most important.
Okay.
They provide guidance on spiritual philosophy, ethical living, and the path to self-realization.
So we've got chanting, deity worship, scriptural study. It seems like a pretty comprehensive spiritual path.
It is.
But for someone who might not be like looking to convert or join a temple,
right.
What are the potential benefits of engaging with the Hare Krishna movement?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, the chanting and meditation practices can be incredibly beneficial for reducing stress and anxiety.
And in today's world, who couldn't use a little more of that?
Exactly.
Right.
But beyond that, ISKCON offers a strong sense of community.
Community?
Yeah, the temples and ashrams provide a space for people to connect, support each other, and find guidance on their spiritual journey.
That sense of belonging is so important, especially in a world that can feel increasingly isolating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for those who are drawn to service, ISKCON's Food for Life program offers a tangible way to make a difference.
Right.
Their work in providing meals to those in need across the globe really speaks to the idea of putting your spirituality into action.
So whether you're seeking inner peace, community, or a way to give back, the Hare Krishna movement seems to have something to offer.
It does.
And it's clear that their impact extends far beyond the stereotypes we might have encountered.
That's why it's so crucial to take these deep dives. It allows us to see beyond the surface and appreciate the richness and complexity of different cultures and spiritual traditions.
Yeah. It's about challenging our assumptions and opening our minds to new perspectives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it's time we wrap up this fascinating deep dive into the Hare Krishna movement.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's been an incredible journey through their history, practices, controversies, and lasting impact.
It has.
What are some of the key takeaways that have stood out to you?
Well, I think what's most remarkable is the resilience and adaptability of ISKCON, from those humble beginnings in New York City to their global presence today.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the power of faith and the human desire for connection.
Right.
And despite the challenges they've faced, their commitment to spiritual practice, community, and service remains steadfast.
It's a reminder that even the most unconventional paths can lead to profound meaning and positive impact.
Absolutely.
So for our listeners, I think the key takeaway is this. Don't judge a movement by its stereotypes.
Yeah.
Take the time to explore, ask questions, and see beyond the surface.
Right.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
But before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've been talking about this idea of searching for meaning and connection, and I can't help but wonder.
With its emphasis on inner peace and a sense of belonging, could the Hare Krishna movement be even more relevant in today's world than it was back in the 1960s?
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. Like, we're bombarded with information, technology's advancing at a dizzying pace, and it just feels like everything is moving faster and faster.
Right.
And maybe in a world that's becoming increasingly chaotic and disconnected.
Yeah.
There's like a growing need for what ISKCON offers, that sense of stillness, community, and like a connection to something larger than ourselves.
It's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
Think about it. The practices of chanting, meditation, and mindful living that ISKCON promotes are like tools.
Tools, yeah.
For navigating the complexities of modern life. They offer a way to, find peace amidst the storm, to connect with something deeper within ourselves, and to cultivate a sense of purpose beyond just the material world.
And what's interesting is that these practices, which might have once seemed, fringe or esoteric, are now becoming increasingly mainstream.
Totally.
You see mindfulness apps popping up everywhere, meditation studios are gaining popularity, and people are actively seeking ways to disconnect from technology and reconnect with themselves and their communities.
It seems like there's this growing awareness that the relentless pursuit of material success and external validation isn't ultimately fulfilling.
Yeah.
People are yearning for something more, and perhaps within those ancient chants and the principles of Bhakti Yoga, they're finding a path toward that inner peace and connection they seek.
It's a beautiful thought, and it speaks to the enduring power of, spiritual seeking, regardless of the form it takes.
Yeah.
Maybe our deep dive today will spark some curiosity in our listeners.
I hope so.
Maybe they'll be inspired to, I don't know, check out a local curtain or even try chanting the Maha Mantra themselves.
I'd encourage that.
Yeah.
Experiencing these practices firsthand is often far more powerful than simply, reading or hearing about them.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by how those ancient sounds and rituals resonate within you, even if you come from a completely different cultural background.
It's all about keeping an open mind and being willing to step outside our comfort zones.
Exactly.
So on that note of exploration and discovery, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the Hare Krishna movement.
Indeed, we've journeyed from their unexpected origins in 1960s New York City to their global reach and lasting influence on spirituality and culture.
We've explored their practices, their challenges, their triumphs, and the ways in which they've touched the lives of millions.
It's been quite a journey.
And if there's one thing we hope you take away from this deep dive,
it's to remember that every movement, every culture, every spiritual tradition has a story to tell.
A story that's often more complex and nuanced than we might initially perceive.
So keep an open mind, challenge your assumptions, and never underestimate the power of a good chant.
And until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.